Hello, I'm your host, Effie Pilarinu, and today's special guest, Theodora in Greek. And for those that do not know, that name is a Greek composite of Theo, which is God. And that's why the word theology and so on, and Doro, which is a gift. So Theo is a gift from God. So, you know, you're blushing already. Theo Lau, for everybody who knows her, she is an author. She is an inspiration and a voice in our community that is really very, very inspirational, and you can feel the warmth when you meet her in person. So this is a great opportunity to have you, Theo.
Oh my God, thank you, Effie. I need to dig a hole and hide now because thank you for the very, very kind words. And as I often say, it takes a village. It takes all of us. It takes you. It takes everyone in our community to make it the way it is. So I'm just grateful that I'm here. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure also to see you recently, although under conditions of whatever, masks and stress and so on, but at least we saw each other, and that was wonderful.
And we had a chance to catch up. We even had a picture to prove that we were actually there. I mean,
exactly.
You know, it's so much more than, you know, what we had not been able to do in the last 2 years. So that was good.
Yeah. So today I invited you for two reasons. One, to celebrate the fact that you have an article published in the Journal of Digital Banking, and it is around artificial intelligence in financial services. So that's one reason. And the other reason is to celebrate 1 year from the publication of your book with Bradley, and you know, a book that you weren't able to do the usual physical book tour that traditionally goes with it because of the situation of COVID. But it's clearly a book that has already inspired a lot of people, and it's a book that, despite so many changes that are going on in our market, and I'm sure that, you know, from the time you wrote it, you gave it to the editor, it went to the publisher, it printed, it came out. Even by that time, things had changed. Imagine a year later. But I find still that, you know, it's a book that you can open a chapter and read it independently of the others, and it will still get the message through, the narrative that you want to communicate through this book. So
yeah, I'm so glad it resonates with you. It was a labor of love, sweat, and tears. We often joke that it was a miracle that Bradley and I didn't strangle each other when we were writing it, because we wrote it during COVID, when each one of us had 2 children who were trying to homeschool. As you say, it was very stressful circumstances. But what that did, though, I think it helped reinforce what we truly believed are the things that we need to focus on, not just financial services industry, but also beyond, what we need to strive for as a society and what we can accomplish, right? It was as much as a book about business case and business models and inspirational stories, as well as a book of introspection and hope that we know what didn't work. And we also know what works, because we have, you know, stories from founders and big companies and small that tell us what has worked for them. So I hope that it could be a blueprint for those who want to make a difference, because all of us can, regardless of where you are and regardless of what industry you come from.
That's true, but you know, we have to say it, call it by its name, that you are an optimist, despite the fact that, you know, we live in a world that is full of fear, uncertainty, You know, we all know and acknowledge and are becoming increasingly aware that we have these big systemic problems to solve that are social problems, and we hope that technology can help us for many reasons. But the question is, how do you maintain that optimism despite all that is happening? And I mean, to me, the book is a manifestation of, you know, you're spreading this message, this light, if you want, in all this darkness. So it has this spiritual aspect to it.
It was challenging, I have to admit. I think, especially in 2020, right, when our worlds literally turned upside down, and we were completely socially detached from everything that we know, from people that we know and love. And, you know, for example, for myself, I still had not been able to see my parents in Hong Kong for 2.5 years. And that's not easy. It weighs on you, and you see the impact of it on the kids. My kids at that time, they were 7 and 10. They were little, right? Old enough to understand a little bit what's going on, but young still to not completely be able to process, and it shows in their behavior and all of that. And it was really hard. I think what helped me through, though, was them as well. You feel what they feel, and you see what they see. And if anything, I would say it makes me work even harder to try to make a change, because I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it for them and their kids and generations of children thereafter. And if I am fortunate enough, right, to be able to write a book and have it published, that I'm fortunate enough to have a mic, to be able to talk to people that some would listen, I want to use it for good, because it is as much as a power as it is a responsibility. Those of us who have a platform, we have to use it. We can drown in our sorrows, and trust me, I do, bottles of Barolos later, but at the end of the day, we still need to live.
I mean, reading your book, I felt privileged. You know, I was able to leave my country and go and go do graduate studies in the US and work there, and then work around the world and travel and so on. And as you said, it really felt that I have a responsibility, but not in a heavy way, in a guilty way, in a way that do whatever you can do from wherever you are, what your platform is, what your network is, the people that you touch, the people that you speak to, the people that you're with in every realm of life. So that was very, very inspirational. And I love from your book these quotes that you started each chapter, and you know, started from there and then went on to say, you know, a story from your perspective, especially the ones that, you know, talk about the fact that money is really very emotional. And then at the same time, you know, when I look at the article that you wrote in the journal, it's a hardcore, you know, article with figures and facts and percentages and dollars and this and that, and you know, but it also has that how can I say, spice that you always manage to add to whatever you say. So tell us about this article and how it came about.
So let me give you a backstory before we get there. There was a part in the book that got cut out by the editor, and it was actually my favorite part of the book, unfortunately. We had to make a trade. I wanted to, and it was something that I strongly believe in, that it's not our book. It's a book with voices from everyone. And so we included, as you say, quotes in the beginning that inspired us for the chapter, but also quotes from people, a lot of guests from our podcast. I want them to be part of it because the book is as much as a story of what we believe, as well as a story of how others see it. And because of that, we had to shave off 10,000 words of ours. And within that 10,000 words were 2 chapters that talk about why we wrote the book and what you felt through the book when you saw it. And it was a story about my mother and my parents, their upbringing. My mother was a refugee, and they had to leave their homeland when she was just a few months old. They lost everything. It took me a while before I decided that I could actually talk about it, but they lost a lot. But through that hardship and through the sacrifices that she made, as well as my father made, in the end, they met. And the rest, as you say, is history. But that story of her upbringing and the values that she instilled in me is part of what you saw through the book, and is also part of what you saw through all the articles that I've written, even the ones with numbers and facts, because that's part of how my brain works, is driven by numbers. But what I wanted to show was through it all, behind the numbers, behind whatever trends that we see, behind whatever credit scores that we give to people, behind it is a human story, flesh and blood, experiences, emotions, all the beautiful things and the messiness about humanity. Anthony, and regardless of his AI or any other emerging technology, that's what it is about. It's about the human behind the story. So the Journal of Digital Banking, that piece is the second piece that I wrote for them. And it's all around using the use of artificial intelligence in financial services. And in this particular one, I drew a lot of examples from actual applications, right? From wealth management to call center management to fraud, AML, and what have you. Those are all very, very familiar use cases that we use in FI. But what I wanted to highlight was that there's so much more that we can do with such powerful technology. There's a lot more that we can use it for, in addition to driving efficiency in operations, right? It's important. I'm not against capitalism. I think it's important. We need to keep the lights on. But at the same time, I feel that we don't allow ourselves to imagine enough what extends beyond the call center, what extends beyond the back office of the banks. At the end of the day, what is financial services? Financial services isn't just about lending money to people. It seems like a large part of it is, as is fintech. It's about helping us get to where we need to be, whether or not it's a dream vacation, whether it's a house, whether or not it's just to have a secure life with our families. What are we doing to enable that? It's not by rounding up. It's not by, trading in, funds. It's more than that, right? I feel like when we think about money, we think about it as product. We think about it as an independent atom. But in real life, in reality, we don't think in vacuum. All of the atoms, they bounce together. They have a chemical reaction. They create new things. Every decision that we make in our financial lives, whether or not I want to make a big car purchase, in the back of that mind, I'll have to think about, can I afford it? That's the easy one. What would that do to the savings I need to put together for my kids' college? What would that do to my long-term retirement? And what would that do to the extended families and ecosystem that I have, my parents, right? And I use that example a lot because I am 49. Yay! Next year I'll be celebrating my 50. So I have another 50 years to go. But let's think about our financial lives, right? I am at a point where my kids are still in primary school. They're young. By the time they are going to be going to college, both of them, I would be in my almost 60. That's typically the time when people advise their clients to start thinking about retirement or would probably be retired already. That's also when my parents are going to be 80. So when you think about all of these big life events that happen, and they all require our attention, they all require our resources. I need to plan for saving up for my own retirement, same time, plan for helping my parents, because we all do in, one way or shape or form, and supporting my kids through college. How can I do that? I cannot plan in vacuums. And so neither should the products and services that, regardless if it's a fintech or a financial advisor or a bank, gives us. And that's where I see the power of AI and data, is to guide us through all of these transitions and through all of the messiness and life stages and events and things that happen in our lives, and create that beautiful big ecosystem of the changing nature of our financial relationships. But yet we're not there.
We're not there because we haven't shifted from the product part
Exactly.
or the transactional in general part to what you're describing, which is a people-centered part. I mean, I personally have that experience. I'm exactly where you are going to be in 10 years. So I'm nearly 60 and our kids are in college. And none of the financial services providers that I'm with have ever approached me with that perspective to discuss concerns. They only approach to facilitate transactions, be it an FX transaction to send, from Swiss francs where I am to euros to my son or whatever, or to sell an investment product, but without a mindset of where I am. Or when our son, who's the second child, went to college and what that means, or even, in a foreign country, I have to look into what kind of insurance is there, instead of the AI knowing that he's left from one country, went to another, needs different coverage because he's out of the family. Things like very simple.
Exactly, right? And that's how humans think. That's how we lead our lives. But yet, if you take a step back and look at where we are in financial services with all the glory and the power of technology, we're not even close to being there.
We're not even close. And I think you bring often this point around holistic living in a machine world. And I mean, there's lots to talk about there about how up to now it's really been the efficiencies that you spoke about, and that really is related to the fears that most people have around robots or automation replacing their jobs, and they are going to take these what we call, I don't know, repetitive jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
I like to think of Excel jobs.
I still like Excel.
I love Excel. I made my list the other day of how many subscriptions I have, and I put it in Excel just to look at really, I can't keep track of how many I have and why I have them, and, that type of thing. And shouldn't it be, shouldn't some AI tell me what I'm doing?
You would think, right? Yeah. And you brought up an amazing point. I was thinking about it the other day with the whole cord cutting, right? In the US, we went from this one giant cable package to, everything is a subscription economy because you can subscribe to what you like. You don't have to worry about all the excess that you don't like. But when you add all of those up, it's actually more complicated than how it was before, because now you have so many different relationships, and B, it's actually more expensive. And it brings me to think about, what about all these other payment products out there? We talk a lot about buy now, pay later, for example, right? It was created and being marketed as, because you know exactly what you have due and when. So it's easy for you to manage. True, to a point. what if you have 3, 4, 5, 6 different of these buy now, pay later relationships with different providers?
Yeah.
How can a consumer keep track of what I owe, when, and how? There isn't anything out there to show them what they have gotten themselves into and what they need to do to get themselves out. And if you then look at the business models that a lot of these fintech startups have, they are built based on charging fees to the merchants and charging late fees and whatever fees that it is for consumers if they mess up. And now we're talking about reporting some of those buy now, pay later relationships with credit bureaus. What's going to happen? Are we merely exchanging some other overdraft fee product with another late fee product?
Yep.
Right? We're just redressing what we did before. So are we really doing good? I don't know. I like to be an optimist, but at the same time, I look at it, I'm like, this cannot be good when people are using it to pay for gas, right? When many people are using it to pay for essentials, how can it be good for consumers?
Theo, I thought of you this morning as I was reading, the usual, I was reading news and I read about Robinhood. It stopped going up 25% because they extended the hours of trading for their customers. And I'm like, okay, I have to pull my hair and say, okay, I get it. This is more access in the name of more access, in the name of democratization, because, the hedge fund manager could trade, in the extended hours, and now everybody can. But hold on a second, is this our need at this point as a society to instill that fairness, that everybody has access to everything in this sense, when we have basic other problems?
Exactly.
Basic other problems, if you told me that you're paying salaries to everybody on a daily basis, that I can understand. It's progress. Why not? But this type of progress is like, give me a break.
Exactly, right? And you have to wonder, where is all of the smartness of humans? Where did our brain power go? And who is it benefiting at the end of the day? It's not the consumers, I would say, right? If you look at, for example, back to the topic of AI or fintech funding, we broke all kinds of funding records for private equity last year, right? AI funding doubled last year, right? And
$93.5 billion for the people that are hearing us. I mean, I have this number in front of me. It's a huge number.
It's dumbfounding. And then you look at who are the entities that have power over that, who can actually make use of this technology and for who. And then you look in parallel, the wealth inequality around our world, right? The top richest 10 people in the world are men. So much so that the figure earlier this year, I'm sure that's changed by now, between those 10 men, they can each spend $1 million collectively, 10 million a day. It will take them over 400 years to spend down their wealth. Now, put that in perspective. I can't even imagine spending $1 million a year, not even 5 years, 10 years. And yet they can spend that much in a day, and it would take them 400 some years to spend it down.
And this is continuing, because if we look at the newly created wealth in the crypto blockchain Web3 space, it is again a male. There's even more sort of what I would call non-diversity, because basically there's a new digital divide here. It's a very small group of people that has access to this technology because it's not yet user-friendly, right? So again, we are having a repeat of a phenomenon. I mean, when I started my career in the 90s, that was the elite on Wall Street, right? the yuppies on Wall Street, that the society felt, and it was true, that they had unfair access to all this. But now we have another group.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if they're wearing T-shirts or hoodies and they are coders or non-coders. Most of them are not even coders. So we're not really changing.
I don't think we have changed. And that was what my agony was and has been, is, you know, in the field of tech, or in, you know, the field of tech where I came from before I came into fintech, it was the same thing, right? You know, there are not enough women that are in engineering and tech programs in schools. And that just continues to reflect on career path, and it continues to reflect on leadership roles and all of that. It becomes a pyramid, like you say, where the top just, they look homogeneous regardless of where you look at. And it's not because we don't have enough women, right? We have a lot of women. We have a lot of amazing women. And it's not because women do not like tech. I refuse to believe that. I do not think that is the case. But are we intentional enough to actually invite and include different voices in our space? And I would challenge no. And there's so much onus being put on women. Women need to do this. Women need to step up. Women need to lean in. Women need to do X, Y, Z. No, it's not. What about all of us? What about everyone? Or what about all genders? It takes allyship, active allyship, not just allyship on the day of International Women's Day or Women's History Month. It's active advocacy to include different people in our ecosystem. And until then, that will not change. But the problem is, where is the incentive?
Yes, and until what you say, I mean, I've reflected a lot on this issue, having worked in a male-dominated industry from 10 years on Wall Street, and then I spent some time with a hedge fund. And
I can't imagine.
I'll tell you what is true is that even the women that are in that industry, what happens is they adapt culturally, business culture, to the existing culture to survive, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, they lose, in a way, what is different from them. And that is really very, very sad. And then you see, of course, the fact that you have less and less women as you go up the ladder, because there's many reasons there. But this again has not changed. And I must say that I'm disappointed with the culture of a lot of grown-up fintechs that have scaled, right? And in their growing up, the business culture that they show, the way they treat their employees specifically, is no different than, what was the average, or what we were criticizing about the traditional and the incumbent world. And that,
I agree.
That is sad. But since we're both optimists, let's switch and talk about this shared vision that is really what is in your book, right? And what you're trying to get out there with all the work that you do, right? And I mean, to me, that is the distilled version of what you do.
That there is a pathway forward, and people around the world have shown us how. So it's not a matter of missing the tech or missing the business models to do good and balance profits and purpose. It's about our intention to do good. If you're intentional, you can do it. And And it's not just a B Corp, right? There are tons of companies, different sizes, that have chosen the path to think about their employees, think about stakeholders in the society beyond shareholders, think about their responsibility to the world. I think we can do it. We can do it. And it's a matter of mindset and reframing as well. I think, we read a lot of headlines about the graying of society, for example, right? Longevity is a big topic that I have been studying and working on even before I met most of my friends in fintech. It's getting old is a biological thing. We don't need to change the clock or turn back time or what have you. But instead of looking at it as a burden to the society, and of course it will if we don't change the way how we think about it, it can be, and it is, an opportunity, especially when we're thinking about now when there is a quote unquote talent crisis, when a lot of companies can't find enough people to do the work they do. What they didn't realize is they're sitting on a trove of people with a wealth of experience. Yes, may not be the quote unquote digital native, but let's not forget a lot of the tech that we use nowadays are created by people that are quote unquote in the gray economy. And these people have seen things, they have experienced things. Why don't we include more of these voices and more of these talent in how we do things nowadays? Thinking back to my parents, they retired when they were in their early 50s. No one does that anymore. We're working longer. And we're working longer and more active in everything that we do. We have gained an extra 30 years of living since the early 1900s. So let's use that, because these are the people that are still consuming things. These are the people that have families and children, and they want to be part of a society. It makes no sense to shun them out. And so when we start thinking about how we can leverage this growing population, 10,000 people turn 65 on a daily basis in the US, if you include them in what we do, you create products for these people intentionally, and not just them. You design for the end, for the edges, right? That's what they always like to say, design thinking. You can include a whole lot more users of our tech. And this is where I think really strongly about how, when we look at fintech, right? You look at how they often they design for the millennials, now they design for the Gen Z, and then the alpha. I don't know what else comes after that. But it's not because the other population don't want to use it. It's because they don't see the value in using that product. It doesn't do anything for them. So why don't we think a little broader, right? Create something that's truly useful.
You remind me of this Robert De Niro movie. I don't remember.
Oh, The Intern.
Yes.
The Intern.
Yes. The Intern. I mean, we should talk about that movie more.
Yes.
Because really, that's exactly, I mean, I get really upset. I remember it was 2 years ago when Deutsche Bank announced that they were going to let go 18,000 employees. And then at the same time, they were spending on innovation an exorbitant amount of money. And I'm like, why don't you take 10% of that budget and those 18,000 people, train them, make them to feel part of what you want to accomplish through this innovation. And I'm sure that you'll have 90% success.
Yes, because your employees are your best advocates, right? Exactly. You don't have to you don't always have to look outside of your company to look for talent. You build your talent from inside, you reskill them, upskill them.
Yeah. And empower them by not feeling that they're obsolete, that there's this digital divide. And by the way, the relentless rhythm of change makes anybody feel obsolete. I mean, if you and I, sort of close our eyes and ears for 1 week and we come back after a week, it will be like, oh, what happened? like I lost the train, the rhythm, or whatever. Imagine for everyday people or people that are in the services, and they have tasks to do that are old, right? Old processes, and then they're made to feel more and more obsolete.
Yes, absolutely. And again, they have the experience of working through different things. They will be the best people to tell you how we can change upon it, how we can improve upon it, how we can make the world better and help the company run better, right? People are your asset. That's not a PR slogan.
So at least we got, I mean, let me tell you, Theo, I've never had an interview where I had planned, to discuss 1, 2, 3 topics. And, we haven't discussed any of those that I had planned, but it's wonderful.
Sorry, I have a habit of, distracting and diverging conversation.
Fantastic. I mean, my thinking is that, everything, if you want to have a breakthrough result, of course, you have to, that has to before have some breakthrough action. But before that, it's the thinking, it's the narrative and the mindset in your head that has to change. So it's like breakthrough thinking, mindset, intention, and then you can take an action. And then you can have the results. So it's all about, the narrative. And that's what I love about your laser focus on the narrative. And then it's like you're attracting all these stories or anti-stories, and that way you can get your message out, which is a very powerful message.
And let's hope that we can actually put it into action, right? That more people will join and just make the world a little bit better, one person at a time.
So let's celebrate the fact that at least with technology, we can create bigger digital communities.
Yes.
Beyond our physical reach, right? And get this message out because of this power of a digital community.
See, connectivity, using technology for good. Voila.
Yes. Connectivity and collaborative technologies. Those are the ones that we should leverage, and there we should have a separate discussion about which ones lend themselves more to be used because they have collaborative spirit built in. And that's where I truly believe that blockchain is one of those. Of course, it remains to be seen how we use it, because like with everything, we people are not very well known to always grow the use cases that are best for everybody, right? But I think that that is true. But the same might be true for AI. But we need a whole new discussion around whether AI has in its if you want, spirit, or in its nature to be a collaborative tool or not. And of course, the way that we are using it is what matters.
It is. Yeah, that you got it. I think that is the most important part. It's not about the tech, it's about what we use it for. It's about the applications of it. It's about what we enable and what we empower. I think that is the main focus.
So let's make a promise to each other. One, that we'll have another session where you talk about the chapter that was cut out of the book. Okay, that's
That was
one
my
thing.
favorite chapter.
Okay,
It
your
still
favorite
hurts.
chapter, and also a session where we talk about how it was to co-author a book. I can't imagine that type of challenge because, there's no linear process to do that. And I can't imagine how that happened, even though, the purpose and the spirit and the narrative, you're completely in alignment with Bradley, but that's another thing
We
to
wrote it in 6 months. That was a lot of long nights, yes. But I'm still amazed we made it through. But it was an experience.
There must have been something like, I believe there always is when you do a project like that. It's as if there's an urgency, some pressure to do it that makes you, work those nights and those extra hours for something that, there's no external reason to do it, like a
Other than we
tangible
were
one.
crazy. But no, it was, we'll save that for another day. And it was a truly learning experience. It was good though.
Okay, Theo, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we will reconnect soon, both physically and digital.
Hope
And
so.
let's say cheers to the digital community of Beyond Good.
Thank you so much. And thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.